Arrest him. He's violating HOA law and endangering the community. That's what the woman in heels was screaming into her phone, right at the edge of my old ranch, where I stood feeding chickens, jaw slack, wondering if I'd woken up in the middle of a bad reality show. There was a guy filming behind her like we were about to go viral for all the wrong reasons. And then, here come the sirens. 3 cop cars, lights flashing, rolling up to my gate like I'd robbed a bank. The wildest part? I never joined their HOA. Not then, not ever. But there she was, police paperwork, camera crew, a binder thick enough to serve as armor, trying to shut me down on my own land. You ever face off with a neighbor like that? Someone who doesn't just cross a line, but tries to draw a new one under your feet? Let me back up a sec. This insanity started about 8 months ago, right after Grandpa Dean passed away and left me his 15-acre ranch. I'd been working as a map maker for websites, living out of a shoebox apartment in the city, but when the ranch came my way, it felt like a sign to trade the concrete for open sky. So I packed up, moved in, and found peace. Chickens clucking, sunsets blazing, the kind of life my grandfather always swore was worth fighting for. For the first few months, it was bliss. Then came Sunset Meadows, a new subdivision 2 football fields away. Perfect lawns, matching mailboxes, houses so similar you could get lost just walking the block. The contrast was almost funny. My chickens on one side, their plastic flamingos on the other. I figured, hey, we'll all get along. I was dead wrong. The first knock came from Marlene Cutter, Sunset Meadows' self-declared president. Bleach blonde hair, permanent scowl, clothes wrinkled like she'd slept in them, binder full of highlighted rules. Friendly visit, she said, flipping through legalese about noise, livestock, community standards. I let her talk until she started implying that maybe I should be in her HOA and maybe I needed to bring my ranch up to code. I smiled, told her kindly I was outside her jurisdiction, and watched her storm off, binder clutched like the Holy Grail. The next morning, orange flags popped up on my boundary. Somebody was marking something. Then my neighbor Helen McCoy stopped by, cup of coffee, voice low. Watch her. She's trouble. Helen used to work at the county records office and had moved out here to escape exactly this kind of HOA madness. She warned me, Marlene files complaints like it's a hobby. She's been after half the street already. It only took a few days for things to escalate. 2 police cruisers barreled up my private drive one morning. The younger officer looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. His partner wore the weary expression of a man who'd seen his share of nonsense. Noise complaints, unsanitary conditions, possible zoning violations. They read off, not even trying to hide their skepticism as Henrietta, my friendliest hen, followed me like a dog. I pulled out my paperwork, explained the property's agricultural zoning. Totally legal, every last chicken. Before they could wrap up, here came Marlene, binder waving, citing sections and subsections about livestock, all while filming everything on her phone. You're ruining property values, she shrieked, glaring at Henrietta like she was public enemy number 1. The older cop finally had enough. Ma'am, unless he's in your HOA, we can't enforce your rules. You could see the steam coming out of Marlene's ears. She stomped off, muttering threats about community action. The younger cop handed me his card and whispered, might want to get your boundaries surveyed. Just in case. That should have been the end. But for Marlene, no, it's just a speed bump. More orange flags appeared, this time right inside my property line. Helen spotted Marlene in her Honda, taking pictures through a telephoto lens, scribbling notes. It was like she thought she was on some undercover mission. Her next act? She started posting photos of my land on neighborhood Facebook groups, painting me as a menace to civilization. 12 hens, she claimed, were a health hazard and a noise violation. Never mind that my chickens were quieter than their lawnmowers. One morning, I caught her inside my fence, measuring tape stretched between my coop and the property line. Ma'am, you're trespassing, I said, as polite as I could. This affects the whole community, she snapped, acting like she had some divine authority. You're not in charge here, I reminded her, but she just ignored me, scribbling in her notebook. That's when things got weird. I went to the county planning office, asked for updated surveys, and got stonewalled. The clerk, Frank Morrison, mumbled something about delays and community development projects, hinting the HOA was working with the county on expansion. Later, I overheard staff talking about that guy from the ranch. Instructions were to slow walk any of my requests. I realized this was bigger than one nosy neighbor. Marlene was leveraging the system, maybe even bribing local officials. The IT all came to a head after someone left my chicken coop open. 4 birds missing, tire tracks leading towards Sunset Meadows, footprints that weren't mine. Trail cam footage caught a figure at dawn, but not enough to ID. Helen came by, even more worried. There's grant money for HOAs that show active management. Sunset Meadows is desperate to expand, and your land's in the way. The pieces started falling into place. This wasn't just about property values or chickens. Someone wanted me gone, and they'd use every trick they had. Then came the full-on invasion. Marlene showed up with 6 HOA board members, survey gear, tripods, ring lights, the works. "We're documenting damage caused by illegal livestock," she announced, streaming live to an audience eating up every twist. "Sonic chicken weapons," she called them. I almost laughed until I realized how easy it is to lose control of your own story online. That night, my bank called. My property was flagged for legal dispute based on documentation the HOA had sent. My loan was now under review. Reputation shot, legal bills piling up, neighbors looking at me sideways. Even my old friend Mike called from the city. "Maybe it's time to get out, Dean." I almost believed him. But then, digging through Grandpa's papers, I found a letter, never sent, telling me to never back down, that the land only belongs to those willing to defend it. That was my wake-up call. I started digging for every piece of evidence, overlaying my digital maps with Grandpa's 1987 hand-drawn survey. And what do you know? The HOA playground, clubhouse, and main parking lot, all built inside my property line. For 15 years, they'd been trespassing, their community assets sitting squarely on my land. Helen helped me cross-check courthouse records. No easements, no permissions, not even a handshake deal. It was all illegal. When I mapped it out, I realized they owed me hundreds of thousands in back rent. Suddenly, Marlene wasn't just my problem. She was the HOA's worst nightmare. The next HOA meeting, I walked in with maps, surveys, a big sign reading, "You owe me $150,000. The room went silent. Marlene tried to bluster, called me a liar, but I played the audio of her admitting to investigating my land and showed emails between her and Sunset Development LLC. Proof of her backdoor deal for a $75,000 kickback if I sold out. It was a full-on mutiny. Homeowners shouted, demanded her resignation, and voted her out 23-2. The news picked up the story, calling it HOA horror story. Map expert destroys corruption. I ended up negotiating a long-term lease with the new HOA board, run by Patricia Williams, a retired teacher with more sense than Marlene ever had. Suddenly, I was the hero, not the villain, and the HOA was paying me monthly to use land that was mine all along. But Marlene had one last move. She bribed an old county clerk to claim my deed was fake, filed a lawsuit, and somehow convinced a judge to issue a restraining order. She showed up in court in pajamas, clutching a teddy bear, ranting about sonic chickens and property terrorism. The judge looked at her like she was from another planet. I pulled out Grandpa's original deed, with photos, signatures, and witnesses who were still alive. The judge threw the book at Marlene. Perjury, bribery, false reports. Even her political allies went down in flames. In the end, justice wasn't just served, it was poetic. I got $275,000 in damages, my ranch doubled in size, and the HOA rebuilt their playground, this time on land they actually owned. Marlene? Last I heard, she was stocking shelves at a grocery store 3 states away, forbidden from coming anywhere near my land. Today, my chickens are thriving. Henrietta's a local celebrity. We even made "Don't Cluck with My Land" t-shirts. My little YouTube channel, Boundary Boss, is helping people everywhere stand up to HOA bullies and shady officials. Funny how a stubborn chicken and an old survey map can start a movement.so. What do you think? Was I right to fight? Have you ever dealt with HOA drama, a nightmare neighbor, or someone who just wouldn't take no for an answer? Share your stories and your thoughts on what justice looks like in a community, because sometimes the little guy wins. And sometimes all it takes is a map, a chicken, and a refusal to back down. Hit subscribe, drop your comment, and remember, know your boundaries and never let anyone redraw them for you.